once I started, and there was nothing else like it.
What are you holding in your hands now?
These are items that were seized out of Israel Key's jail cell.
Has the public ever been shown this before?
No. These skulls are drawn in blood.
The blood, where do you believe the blood came from?
I think it was Israel's blood.
Israel Keys is a serial killer who hid his crimes for many years. He was meticulous, he was incredibly bright, and he was incredibly lethal.
And the significance of the 11 skulls, what is that?
We believe that 11 is the total number of victims. I don't think anybody in his family, his friends, his relationships, his spouses had any idea what he was doing.
It gives me the chills to think I had talked to him, had known him.
That's where I got my kicks, I guess, was being able to live two different lives and have no one have a clue.
Unless you heard him talk about the murders, you would not know that he was a serial killer.
With Keys, it wasn't about a particular victim. It was about a location.
Why did he pick these folks?
I didn't. It was just random.
Samantha Koenig is an 18-year-old girl who was raised and lived in Alaska. She went to high school here. She worked at the coffee stand.
She was a young girl working her job. I'm terrified of what she went through.
So at this point, Samantha she's making coffee.
She has no idea her entire life is about to change in a horrible way.
No.
People never expected stuff to happen to him.
He would wait until he had the victims under control, and then that's when I think the real monster came out.
There's a specific way I wanted things done, very specific way I wanted things to happen, and I have the whole thing planned out. I have everything I need to do it.
He loved to travel.
Every time I'd drive, I'd be looking for places, good places to do stuff.
You'll see locations in Seattle, Gresham, Oregon, Port Angeles, Washington.
He would rent cars, he would drive thousands of miles, he would take people from one state and he would bury them in other states.
San Diego, Tijuana, Salt Lake City, Utah, Cleveland, Ohio, Edmond, Washington, Fort Wayne, Indiana. There are potential victims wherever Israel Keys traveled.
Do you believe that this weapon somewhere in the United States may have been used to kill someone?
It's possible.
I had big plans for that gun.
We know that there are families out there whose loved ones died at the hands of Israel Keys. Right now, we're just trying to find them.
In February of 2012, the residents of Anchorage, Alaska were shaken by a frightening mystery.
It basically looked like someone just literally walked out of their shift.
It was the evening of February 1st when 18-year-old Samantha Koenig vanished after her night shift at this roadside espresso stand.
She went to work that day, expecting to go home to her boyfriend and her dad.
Michelle Tasker is a family friend.
Her boyfriend was supposed to pick her up that night.
But that didn't happen. Multiple calls went unanswered. Several hours later, her boyfriend's cell phone lit up with a message from Samantha's phone.
The text messages said something to the effect of, I'm going on vacation, I'm tired, that she was just going away and she'd just left. But we knew she hadn't left. That wasn't her character. So they knew something was wrong.
Something was terribly wrong, and the next day, investigators watched it all unfold on security camera video. FBI Special Agent Jolene Godin soon joined the team trying to find Samantha.
What are we looking at?
This is Samantha. 8 p.m. is closing time, so she's doing all of her normal things that she would do to get ready for closing.
That's when a masked man walked up to the window. He wanted much more than just coffee.
So Samantha's over at the window here. She handed something to the customer. She backs up, and this is where you see Samantha do this. You see her raise her arms.
When you raise your hands like that, it's usually because somebody's doing
Something, exactly.
What started as an apparent robbery suddenly took a darker turn.
She turns the lights off.
Do you think her assailant said turn off the lights?
Yes. At this point, you see an individual jump in through the window.
Right through the window?
Right through the window.
Have you ever seen something like that before?
No. And then you see two individuals walk away. It looks like an abduction.
As the news spread,
Just please help find my daughter.
Samantha's father, James Koenig, went public.
I don't know if my daughter's being fed, taken care of, if she's still alive, if she's getting any sleep.
As time went on, there was a tremendous amount of fear about what happened and who was in our community that could do something like this.
The FBI joined the Anchorage Police Department in looking at family and friends.
Did you have a sense you were getting to know this young woman?
Yes, yes.
FBI Special Agent Kat Nelson learned everything she could about Samantha and the people she knew.
She seemed like she had a very good spirit, like she was a very kind individual, caring about others. You could tell that she had a lot of friends that cared about her a lot.
Samantha's boyfriend was quickly ruled out as a suspect.
There was no obvious lead in this case, and it posed so many barriers for us in the beginning as to where to start looking for her.
10 days after Samantha disappeared, a vigil was held.
Hundreds of people came.
What else can we do?
Flyers, hand out flyers, ask around. If you know somebody who knows something, get them to talk. We just need some sort of, it's that one lead, that one tip that's going to bring her home.
As friends and family fan out across Anchorage to try to find Samantha, the question is, could she also be out here somewhere in the Alaskan wilderness?
Then finally, after 3 agonizing weeks,
That's when the text came in that said there was a ransom note and where to go.
the text to Samantha's boyfriend was as mysterious as her disappearance. It said to look in Connor Park, under pick of Albert. It also said, "Ain't she purty?"
We just got up and just ran, and everybody took off to the park. One of the girls kind of noticed something on the bulletin board. I walk up and there's a picture of a missing dog named Albert, and right underneath is a plastic bag with looked like a clipping and a photograph in it. Didn't touch it. We called the police.
That note contained a picture of Samantha and a long typed out message that talked about putting $30,000 into Samantha's bank account.
That account was connected to Samantha's debit card, which the kidnapper had. And the photo, which has not been made public, was of Samantha holding a newspaper.
I believe it was dated February 13th, so well after Samantha's abduction. So the hope, of course, is that Samantha is alive.
Samantha's dad deposited $5,000 into her account. Several hours later, a man makes an ATM withdrawal using Samantha's card.
He has covering over his face, dark clothing, he has gloves on his hands. I mean, so there's very little you can tell.
Investigators rushed to the ATM, but were too late, missing the suspect by minutes. 1 week later, another ATM withdrawal is made.
This one is very different. This withdrawal occurs in Wilcox, Arizona.
Nearly 4,000 miles away.
And then a short time later, we have one in Lordsburg, New Mexico, then Humble, Texas, and then Shepherd, Texas.
He's heading east.
He's heading east. We can see that he's moving across the I-10 corridor.
But the suspect had made a crucial mistake. During the ATM withdrawal in Arizona, a white Ford Focus can be seen in the background.
That information was pushed out to law enforcement across that entire corridor.
Then, on March 13th, a state trooper notices a vehicle matching that description in a Texas hotel parking lot.
And a short time later, a man comes out, he gets in the vehicle, and he starts to drive away.
The trooper follows.
And once that vehicle exceeds the speed limit, he has his probable cause to pull that vehicle over.
And when he asks the driver for identification,
He ultimately presents him with an identification card for Israel Keys.
And who the heck is Israel Keys?
Israel Keys was not even on our radar.
that trooper's instincts were spot on. A search of the car uncovers Samantha's ID, her debit card, her cell phone, and a gun, along with a disguise that matched the man in the ATM photos.
At this point, we believe we have our guy.
But now, the FBI wanted to know, what had Israel Keys done with Samantha Koenig?
The race is on because we still don't have Samantha. We have him, but we don't have Samantha. So if Samantha is alive, then we really need to find her quickly.
In March 2012, 2 weeks after Israel Keys was arrested in Texas, he was extradited to Anchorage, Alaska.
At the point, we didn't really know, was he the one who took and kidnapped Samantha Koenig, or was he someone who was just using a credit card that he found?
FBI agent Jolene Godin says investigators initially didn't know what to make of Keys.
What was it like to look into the eyes of Israel Keys?
I spent a lot of time with Israel Keys. You could be in a room with him and it was like you were in the room with your neighbor.
I think I saw it at Walmart.
And then there were other times where the hair on the back of your neck stands up a little bit.
Investigators scrambled to learn everything they could about Israel Keys, the man.
Did he have a criminal record?
I believe he had a DUI, but that was it. No crimes of violence in his history, no sex offenses in his history, nothing like that. He's a 34-year-old man from Alaska who has a construction business, small, kind of quiet life.
Even one of my colleagues at the U.S. Attorney's Office used him as a handyman.
One of your colleagues hired him to do some work?
Sure. This is someone you felt comfortable giving a key to your house so he could go there when you weren't there to fix things.
An Anchorage resident since 2007, Keys lived in this house with his girlfriend and his 10-year-old daughter from a previous relationship. Neighbors say he didn't stand out.
Nothing suspicious at all, except for that he worked hard.
But investigators had suspicions, and one very pressing question.
We started off with, where is Samantha? No one knew if Samantha Koenig was still alive.
Anchorage Assistant U.S. Attorney Frank Russo and his colleagues knew time was of the essence.
He would have been sitting right here.
So they confronted Keys about Samantha.
Once we heard what he had to say, and went from being a very happy day as a prosecutor to one of the worst I've ever had. We ended up hearing a confession.
Keys admitted he had killed Samantha.
So we wanted to find out why he did what he did.
But before he would say more,
One of the lawyers got you this.
Keys began what would become a pattern for giving information.
He wanted an Americano coffee from Starbucks, he wanted a Snickers bar, and he wanted a particular cigar. Ultimately, Keys lays out the entire story of how the abduction of Samantha occurred.
The video of that confession had never been made public before. In it, Keys says he pointed a .22 caliber pistol at Samantha.
I remember asking him, well, why did you pick that coffee cart at that time? And he just simply said, well, it was open late.
Meaning he chose her completely at random. Keys said as they walked off into the night, Samantha broke free and ran.
He chased after her and tackled her. He indicates that his plan is to hold her for ransom, suggesting to Samantha that if she cooperates, he'll release her. She'll be able to go home.
It was all a lie. Instead, Keyes drove Samantha to his home, chained her up in his shed, and sexually assaulted her. Keyes then strangled her to death. Keyes' family, the FBI later determined, knew nothing about the horrors that had just taken place.
He was talking about the murder of this girl like someone else would discuss what they had for lunch.
Within hours of murdering Samantha, Israel Keyes left Anchorage for a Caribbean vacation with his family.
And where did he leave Samantha? Where was she? Where was her body?
Samantha was in the shed at his house.
Keyes didn't return until 2 weeks later. It was then that he posted the ransom note and texted Samantha's boyfriend, knowing she was already dead. Keyes told investigators he had driven some 35 miles north of Anchorage to Matanuska Lake, where over the course of 3 trips, he disposed of Samantha's remains.
He had drilled a hole and went ice fishing in the lake, and he had tied it up with baling wire and weights, and he had placed parts of her body down the lake as he fished. I remember asking him, "Did you catch any fish?" And he said, "Yeah, I caught fish." And I said, "Well, what did you do with the fish?" And he said, "Well, I took them home and ate them." And for me, that just turned my stomach.
It took the FBI's dive team 10 hours to recover Samantha's body.
I remember I was the one who told both Samantha's mom and dad, and that was a bad day.
Koenig family friend Michelle Tasker.
He has a daughter, and you did that to somebody else's daughter. I don't understand.
You have the right to talk to a lawyer.
After talking to Keyes, investigators realized they had a depraved killer on their hands, and that Samantha was likely not Keyes' only victim.
I'm 2 different people, basically.
How long have you been 2 different people?
Long time. 14 years.
And that tells you what?
That he had been a serial killer for 14 years.
Special Agent Catherine Nelson knew every aspect of Keyes' life needed to be examined.
Cleveland, Ohio.
So she started a deep dive into his paper trail.
Cell phone records, financial records, anything we could find out about his background, his travels, anything that would just tell us a better story about him.
It was starting to look like Keyes could have victims across the United States.
We know that Israel Keyes traveled to places such as Washington, California, Wyoming, Texas, Vermont.
We'll get the whole story eventually.
And he teased his interrogators with details of other murders.
I'll tell you about everything, or give you every single gory detail you want.
But before Keyes would agree to do that, he wanted something extraordinary in return.
I want an execution date.
For you?
Yes.
And he said, "I want a promise that I'll get the death penalty. If you do that, then I'll tell you about all the people I killed." What we said is, the more murders you give us, the more likely it is that they're going to want to impose the death penalty on you.
But without a guarantee of death, Keyes was reluctant to say anything more.
So give me something to work with, hold a bunch of your cards back, but give me a card.
Finally, Keyes folded.
All right, I'll give you 2 bodies and a name.
Hey, Israel, how you doing? All right.
Something to eat?
No, I'm fine.
Candy bar or nothing?
They are odd moments to see.
Swear off those candy bars?
Yeah,
It's in the fridge. Well, yeah, I'm gonna eat it.
Investigators casually bonding with their interview guest.
Get him a cigar and let him says we got you over here.
Awesome.
Wow, a cigar for nothing.
In some ways, to the outsider, it looked like you guys were in a way befriending a serial killer.
Yeah.
Can you give me like an hour on the internet, maybe?
Sure.
But there was method to this madness, says Assistant U.S. Attorney Frank Russo.
It was just the act that we had to put on when we went in that room. It was just trying to kind of do anything we could to get information.
Israel Keys voluntarily granted 24 interviews to various investigators in the 7 months after his arrest.
Is it true he could have walked out at any time?
Sure.
FBI Special Agent Jolene Godin.
I think he wanted to tell the story. He wanted to talk about what he did.
Even my own family pretty much as soon as I did it. So.
He enjoyed the rush. He enjoyed the thrill of it.
That strategy paid off when Keys gave up the names of 2 victims, a married couple more than 4,000 miles from Anchorage in Vermont.
He gave us the names of the people. We wrote them down.
And what was the couple's name?
Bill and Lorraine Currier.
Do your intel guys immediately try to find out if there's a missing couple?
Absolutely.
What do you learn?
Right away that Bill and Lorraine are missing.
And have been missing for some time.
Correct. Bill and Lorraine Currier are a couple that lived in Essex, Vermont. Nothing stands out really about them. They were just kind of living their life.
The Curriers vanished on a night in June 2011, leaving their family bewildered.
We love them both with all our hearts. We're devastated by their disappearance and in fear for their lives.
After interviewing neighbors, police drew this sketch of a possible suspect.
Police say this composite sketch of a man who may have been seen driving the couple's dark green Saturn sedan is a big break.
But the case went cold for nearly a year until Keys laid out the roadmap of what had happened.
He flew into Chicago and he drove east. He intended on that trip to commit a homicide. He didn't know who it would be yet.
On that trip, Keys stayed at this hotel in Essex, Vermont. While there, he dug up a bucket, similar to this one that he had buried a few years prior.
So this is just the standard orange Home Depot bucket.
For the first time, the FBI is showing 48 Hours.
These are several boxes of .22 ammunition.
The contents of what Keys like to call a kill cache.
So he would pre-position these caches, and then when the urge came upon him, if he happened to be in that state, he had his tools of destruction ready to go.
Correct. Or he'd plan a trip to a particular state knowing he already had a cache there. He didn't know who he was going to kill, but he already knew that he had the items there that he needed. We have the silencer for the .22. We have a wood stock for a .22, a plastic stock for a .22, a portion of a .22 rifle, and then we have the drum magazine, the .22.
Had a number of .22 caliber bullets.
That's correct.
You ever seen anything like this in your career?
No.
The cache used in the Currier attack has never been found, but Keys told the FBI where they could find this, a weapon he had used in Vermont.
This is a silencer that he's actually constructed himself.
With his murderous tools in hand, Keys went hunting for victims and found himself outside the Currier house.
I decided I was going to look for a house with a couple in it. I was looking for a fairly easy way to get into the garage, and theirs was the first house I found that had all those things.
He just happens to take a walk from his hotel into a neighborhood, and this unsuspecting couple, just living their lives, is about to have a monster at their door.
Yeah.
The monster didn't knock.
He's very quickly in the house. He restrains Bill and Lorraine very quickly.
You just make sure they know right away who's in charge and immediately tie him up.
And then he moves them to their car and he drives them to an abandoned farmhouse that he had scoped out earlier. Keys attacks Lorraine first. She's upstairs in the bedroom. He had restrained Bill downstairs.
But the Curriers were not going down without a fight.
Bill's yelling for his wife. Bill ultimately starts to break free from the restraints, and Keys has to go back downstairs in order to restrain him again.
And what happens down there?
There's a struggle that ensues.
So I knew I was either going to have to knock him out or just kill him. He saw the gun, he started to say something, and it just pissed me off, and I just started pulling the trigger.
Do you think this silencer might have been used in the murder of Bill Currier?
I think it's very likely.
Keys then strangled Lorraine Currier and left the couple in the basement of the abandoned farmhouse.
Did anyone ever find these bodies?
No. A short time after this happened, the house ended up being demolished and it was taken to the landfill. We made numerous attempts at the landfill. It was, I believe, a 10 or 12-week search at the landfill. The FBI was searching in an attempt to find them, but we were not able to recover their bodies.
But as meticulous as Keyes was in covering his tracks, he slipped up.
This is the one item in all the things that we found that belonged to Keyes that actually had his fingerprint on it. There's a perfect right thumbprint for Israel Keyes.
Yeah, right.
No, there is. I don't have the lab report.
Wow. Yeah, I'm impressed. Well, I'm disappointed in myself mostly, but I'm excited.
What other clues had Keyes left behind? What other murders had he committed? Investigators began focusing on his time in Washington State, where Keyes was raised, a place where he would admit to killing at least 4 more people.
Where any of those victims shot, strangled.
We'll get the whole story eventually. For as far back as I can remember. But, you know, that's where I get a lot of the ideas. Either fishing or out hunting. See somebody in the woods.
To understand Israel Keyes, you have to go deep into the vast, remote wilderness where he was raised, the place where he lived off and on for more than 20 years, Washington State.
How many people in the state of Washington do you believe Israel Keyes killed?
We believe he killed 4 victims total in Washington State.
FBI Special Agents Ted Holla and Colleen Sanders first questioned Keyes in 2012. They have spent 8 years investigating his life and crimes in Washington, searching for more victims.
This is like a horror movie, isn't it?
It's very much like a horror movie.
The opening scenes of Keyes' life took place in a secluded cabin outside the small town of Colville.
He grew up poor. He grew up in a large family. There were 10 children in all, and they kind of lived apart from society.
John, where are we heading now?
So we're heading north out of Colville. We're going to go see if we can find where Israel Keyes grew up.
Just right up here on the right.
John Smith and his wife Desiree knew Israel Keyes when he was a teenager. Desiree hasn't been in this area since she was 15.
Yes, this could be it. Yeah, I remember it being long and steep and kind of headed up the mountainside. And yeah, it was completely impassable through most of the winter.
It was built to be completely off the grid, to be completely isolated from society.
No radio, no television,
no
electricity,
no,
nothing.
The Keyes family attended a church that preached Christian identity theology, a philosophy John and Desiree were also raised on, but have since disavowed.
Christian identity theology is very white supremacist. They come from the perspective that the other races are subhuman.
So with Israel Keyes, specifically, he could dehumanize anybody if they rejected his worldview.
Schooled at home, cut off from the outside world, Keyes was socially awkward.
Very quiet, very loner-ish, standoffish. It's hard to explain how he made me feel, but I felt unsafe being near him.
So one specific conversation about killing a deer, he said that the initial shot didn't kill it, and so when he arrived, he started to gut the thing while it was alive.
This is interrogation audio of Keyes describing himself.
I've known since I was 14 that there were things that I thought were normal and that were okay that nobody else seems to think were normal and okay.
Yeah. But just when Keyes committed his first murder is still an open question.
Whose picture are you holding?
My daughter, Julie Marie Harris. She was 12 years old and disappeared on March 3rd, 1996.
Sherry Odegaard says her daughter Julie, a Special Olympics athlete with prosthetic feet, vanished from Colville while waiting for a ride to church.
Then I went up and down every street in this town and screamed her name.
And there was no trace?
No, there was no trace.
Israel Keys, then 18 years old, lived in the area at the time. Julie's prosthetic feet were discovered at the mouth of the Colville River. The next year, her skeletal remains were found.
We asked Israel Keys about Julie Harris and her death, and he said he was aware of it, but that he was not involved in it.
I remember the name, I don't remember the details of the story.
Keys told investigators the birth of his daughter convinced him to never target children.
Something kind of changed in the way I thought, and I didn't want to do anything that would mess with kids or whatever.
But Keys' daughter was born after Julie Harris was murdered. 48 Hours tracked down friends of Julie who had never spoken with law enforcement. One of those friends told us she remembers Keys talking to Julie at the pool where she often swam.
And that Julie ended up giving him her address and phone number. Have you heard this?
No, I did not know that.
Does that sound tantalizing as a possible clue?
Like any other lead that we have, we would want to investigate it fully. We would certainly be interested in talking with her.
People have wondered if your daughter was the very first victim of Israel Keys.
And I'm wondering that too.
Despite the intrigue surrounding Julie Harris, Keys claims his first attempted murder came in 1997 or 1998, when he abducted and sexually assaulted a young woman near Bend, Oregon.
It was weird. I mean, she was scared, but also just talking. So it's like about random stuff. I don't know. It was weird. I was just convinced that I had screwed up that time in Oregon because, you know, I let her go.
He indicated he never let another go after that.
Sometime after that assault, Keys joined the U.S. Army.
Our investigation led us to believe that he was a model soldier and excelled in the Army.
Keys told investigators he waited until he completed a 3-year stint in the Army before he stalked his next victim.
And you had told us it wasn't long when you got out of the military that you killed somebody, and it was that sort of feeling that you needed to do something. It was hard to resist.
Nia Bay, at the farthest northwestern tip of Washington, is best known as home to the Macaw tribe, legendary whale hunters. Keys moved here after marrying a tribe member he met online. They started a family.
He lived there, he rented the house out.
Eric Johnson worked with Keys at the Parks and Recreation Department.
This is his shop here in the blue part.
The blue part, that was his shop. That's where he worked.
Yeah.
There are reminders of Keys' skilled carpentry all around town, including this structure.
He was a great family guy, a smart guy, gifted carpenter, you know, well-spoken.
An upstanding member of the community.
Upstanding member of the community, yeah.
I would do something, and then I would go back like business as usual and go out with friends, go out to bars. You know, for all the years they've known me, they actually don't know me at all, really.
About 60 miles southeast of Nia Bay is another spectacular location, one of the deepest lakes in the United States, which investigators suspect is also a watery grave.
You guys know about Lake Crescent in Washington?
He revealed to us that one of the Washington State victims was actually, their body was sunk in this particular lake.
I think that lake is 500 to 700 feet deep.
Here's a picture of Israel Keys' boat.
Sometime in 2005 or 2006, Keys had a body in this boat.
Any idea who this person may be? Any idea how this person was killed?
No.
How long does a body last in a freshwater lake?
In the last months of 2012, Special Agents Halla and Sanders were hopeful that Keys would give them more information on who is at the bottom of this lake. But the killer had another plan.
I can't be satisfied sitting in prison for all my life. I'd rather go out while I still have some sanity, good memories. down to feel like when you need more information.
After 7 months of interrogations, 7 months of teasing investigators with bits and pieces of his violent past, Israel Keyes decided to take one more life, his own.
Serial killer Israel Keyes was found dead at the Anchorage Correctional Complex.
We received a call early in the morning that on December 1st, 2012, Israel Keyes had committed suicide in his jail cell.
He used a disposable razor to slit his wrist, and Keyes attempted to strangle himself with bedding.
And what was your reaction to that?
My reaction was a lot of these secrets are going to die with him now.
For Samantha Koenig's loved ones, the news hit like a gut punch.
He should have been executed. Now, he killed himself. That's great. It's not what we wanted. We wanted him to stand trial. We wanted him to answer for what he did. But the world's better off. He's gone.
Inside Keyes' cell, jailers discovered a bizarre, blood-soaked suicide note with passages like, "Crushed like a bug, you still die."
We had hoped that that note was going to be clues and tips for us on, and that he was finally going to give us all of the information on the homicides. And it really wasn't. It was kind of a rant.
But the end of Keyes was by no means the end of this case. A few months before his suicide, investigators found those macabre drawings.
He drew a series of 11 skulls, and these were found underneath his bed in his jail cell.
Drawn in Israel Keyes' own blood.
You have 11 skulls. What does this mean?
I think this is the entirety of his crimes.
And it indicates that there are 7 victims we don't have identified.
Prior to his death, Keyes had pointed the FBI to another victim.
There's one in New York.
He refused to provide that victim's name, but investigators believe it happened when Keyes took a road trip through New York State in the spring of 2009. So they combed through missing persons reports and Keyes' computer.
Is this the person buried in New York?
No.
Her name was on your computer.
Which computer? Mine?
When they confronted him with photos, one in particular rattled him. It was a photo of a woman named Deborah Feldman.
Given the way he looked at it and he started shaking a little bit, I would say she is definitely one of his victims.
Deborah Feldman is a woman who went missing from New Jersey. It was in 2009. Her body has never been recovered. We're relatively confident about Deborah Feldman. However, we do not have any forensic evidence to make that connection.
According to the FBI, that would make Deborah Feldman Keyes' 4th known victim, along with Samantha Koenig and Bill and Lorraine Currier. Agents are now determined to identify the remaining 7. And there are clues that point to at least 2 other states.
Tell me about Wyoming. What was there for him?
The Green River in Wyoming is where Keyes had buried his cache near.
Is there a sense that there may be a body somewhere near that river?
We have a strong suspicion that Keyes may have a victim located in that area.
In the late 2000s, Israel Keyes also spent time in California's wine country, including visiting the posh Sonoma town of Healdsburg in May of 2007.
Keyes has often talked to investigators about using boats and also kayaks in the disposal of bodies. We know that he rented a single-person kayak in Healdsburg near a campground during that time in 2007.
But Keyes' road trips weren't limited to the U.S.
In 2007, he drove along the Alcan Highway by himself for about a week of that year.
The Alcan Highway goes through Canada up to Alaska.
Yes, correct. We know that Keyes traveled to Canada quite extensively and specifically said that he would go to Montreal.
When he was asked about whether he'd killed anyone in Canada, what did he say?
He said, "Canadians don't count."
It's been several years since Israel Keyes killed himself. The FBI hopes investigators across the country will take a second look at suspicious deaths in their area. They're also hoping the public can help.
If anyone has any information on Israel Keys and his travels, or if they have a family member that they think may have been potentially a victim of Israel Keys, that they come forward to the FBI with that information.
That includes the Lake Crescent area of Washington State, where Keys told investigators he had dumped a body.
We absolutely want people to come forward who think they may have seen something connected to Israel Keys, especially on this lake.
And what about those kill caches buried throughout the country?
If anyone out there comes across one of these, what should they do?
First, for people not to touch too much and not to contaminate it too much, and definitely contact local law enforcement in their community who can then reach out to us.
For the FBI, their focus is clear.
For me, the important thing is Samantha and Bill and Lorraine and Deborah and all the victims that we don't have identified. That's what this case is about.
And their commitment unwavering.
Do you have an optimistic streak that says we can find answers to the other 7 cases?
I do. I absolutely do. And it won't be easy by any means. And it may take a long time, but I'll never give up trying.
I loved you before this ceremony, and I love you more because of it.
You may kiss your bride.
They were inseparable. Tex absolutely adored Diane, and Diane adored Tex. I feel like the prosecution has tried to make this out to be about someone who is successful and powerful trying to get away with something like murder. They don't know Tex and Diane personally, like I do.
A woman died after she was shot inside a car on this block.
Previously on Breakdown. Welcome back. Before we plunge back into the story of Tex McIver, I'm a reporter with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and we've been covering the Tex McIver case since day one. This was an enormously high-profile case. They were a big-time power couple.
We're going to have plenty of beverages over here, so just everybody start walking, please.
Tex owned a ranch out in Putnam County, which is a pretty nice place for a vacation home. They woke up that morning. Tex made sausage biscuits and coffee and took them upstairs to Diane and Danny Jo, her longtime friend. They spend the afternoon playing golf, and they drive back to Atlanta.
They're on their way back to their condo in Buckhead. They stop on the way at Longhorn to get something to eat. They have some wine at dinner. Danny Jo is driving because she didn't drink. My name is Bruce Harvey, and I represent Tex McIver.
Tex is seated right behind his wife in the back passenger seat. They're going to hit traffic that just stops them still. So they're thinking, we got to get off of the interstate. We got to find a better way to get to Buckhead. According to Tex, he had been asleep, but when they go down this ramp, he wakes up.
And says, I think this is a bad idea, ladies. It's a dangerous area. Will you hand me my gun, honey? And she does.
Tex told police that the people, quote, rose the hair on the back of your neck, unquote. I'd say they drove another 5 to 10 minutes, and they are coming close to Piedmont Park.
He fell back asleep.
I think he fell into what he said was sort of a between being fully asleep and being fully awake.
According to Tex, the car comes to a stop. He was jolted awake.
I was handling the gun. I did not realize it was in my lap. Right. And it went off.
Can a .38 special just accidentally go off?
Never known it to happen. You have to pull the trigger.
Jiminy. Ooh.
The gun would be right here in his lap, according to what he said. So he was startled, he pulls the trigger, and the bullet goes just to the left of the middle here. If you're trying to kill someone, you know that's going to be devastating to whoever's sitting there.
Especially if you're trying to make it look like an accident.
Yes, I would think so, yes. I think there are people who absolutely believe that he killed his wife for whatever reason, probably for money. People get killed over money all the time.
That's the dumbest plan on the history of the planet. And anybody that thinks that that is the way that Tex McIver deliberately killed his wife is just living in a fantasy world.
"48 Hours, the last ride home."
They drove back to Atlanta on a Sunday night. They were headed to Tex and Diane's luxury condominium in Buckhead.
On the night of September 25, 2016, Tex McIver shot and killed his wife, Diane. They'd been together for 16 years, married for 11 years.
I remember the first time I ever met Diane. She just had such a commanding presence about her.
According to close friend Ann Schwall, Diane was the love of Tex's life.
She was beautiful, and there was such an energy and electricity about her.
The year was 2000. 47-year-old Diane was recently divorced with no children and a thriving career as the executive vice president of a real estate and advertising company. In search of a fresh start, she moved into this luxurious condominium in Atlanta's swanky neighborhood, Buckhead.
Everyone in the building was talking about her.
Linda and Rance Winkler say their new neighbor was hard to miss.
She wore St. John and Chanel on the golf course. She wore hats just about every day, and she had a presence and a way of carrying herself.
But, says Linda, no one paid more attention to Diane than another popular divorcee in the building, wealthy labor lawyer Tex McIver.
Before he met Diane, did he have a love life that you knew of? Or a dating life?
No, he was so consumed with his work. He'd been through a very painful, difficult divorce. It wasn't until Diane came along that he was interested in having a romantic life.
Tex was a decade older than Diane, but they soon became inseparable, spending much of their free time at Tex's weekend home, fondly known as the Ranch, where the couple was known for throwing parties for Atlanta's rich and powerful, says friend and Putnam County Sheriff Howard Sills.
They were big entertainers. They were always having somebody there for some kind of party or some kind of political thing like that.
We have had the best yet party.
Diane was always the life of the party. And she was always the boss of the party, too. Tex was usually very reserved, a consummate gentleman. If a lady walked in the room, he was up like a jack-in-the-box.
After 5 years together, Diane agreed to become Mrs. Tex McIver.
He cared about her, which was probably the very first time she had that experience in a lot of years. He didn't need her.
That somebody cared about her?
For her.
Just for her?
Just for her, not for her money. He had as much as she. In fact, in terms of liquid assets, he was further along than she.
So, having both suffered through painful and expensive divorces, The couple decided to keep their finances separate.
I don't know anyone actually who's combined their assets, having married at the age that they married. And you have to remember that Tex had this terrible, painful,
expensive
divorce. And he was never going to put himself in a situation like that.
Was there an issue of money between them?
Not in the conventional sense, but when they started building this place, you can see this place, you see what it's like.
Show place.
Yeah. Yes.
Linda is talking about this guest house on Texas property. Before the wedding, they say Diane insisted on building the massive party house that she named the Saloon.
Tex really didn't want all this. Diane wanted it.
The scale of it.
And he told her that if she wanted it, she would pay for it. And she said, fine.
But money and who paid for what in that relationship would come back to haunt Tex, becoming a possible motive for murder.
Is there any scenario where you can think that Tex would have shot Diane intentionally?
Never. Never once.
Ann Schwall says she admired Diane and Tex so much that she asked them to be godparents to her youngest son, Austin.
They just adored him, and they just poured so much love into him.
Tex was all the family Diane had, and after his divorce, he was estranged from 2 of his children. Too old for children of their own, Ann says they focused all their attention on Austin.
They just wanted so much to show him all the great things that he could do and how he could grow up and be such a responsible young man. Teaching them how to ride horses and how to fish and how to be a good steward of the land and of animals.
And how did Austin feel about them?
Oh, he adored them.
The ranch was their special place. And every year, it's where Tex and Diane insisted on hosting extravagant birthday parties for Austin.
Happy birthday, Austin! Happy birthday! I hope you have a great birthday.
The birthday parties were legendary. A sign of how much they loved him.
Tell me when you heard about what happened.
So he called me. It was in the middle of the night. And as soon as I heard his voice, and he said, we lost Diane. And my immediate reaction was, how am I going to tell Austin?
Ann says Austin never once blamed Tex for Diane's death.
He actually was just really worried about, how Tex was doing.
He's never said I didn't shoot her. He's never said I didn't kill my wife. He is profoundly regretful.
He talked to me a couple of weeks ago, and he said, it's like I smell her, and I break down, I cry.
It was all a tragic accident, according to Tex's defenders. But here's the biggest problem. No one, including Tex, can explain how his gun went off and killed his wife.
We just asked him that day before yesterday.
Yeah. He still cannot give an answer to exactly what happened.
What do you remember after the gun was on? Later, the shock.
2 days after Diane's death, Tex and his then lawyer met with Atlanta Police Department homicide detectives.
I immediately called out. I said, is everybody all right? And Danny Joe said yes. And Diane's head was kind of slanted. She said, I've been shot.
As detectives set out to investigate the shooting of Diane McIver, they focused on their best witness.
You ever taken any, safety classes or anything like that?
No, nothing. Don't worry about a revolver.
And they focused on their best piece of evidence.
Here we are in an almost new SUV with 2 women in the front seat. Right. And I said, I'd like to, if you don't mind, please hand me my gun.
There is no doubt that Tex McIver pulled the trigger on the gun that killed his wife, Diane. The question is why?
Was he asleep as he said he was, and he was jolted awake and pulled the trigger, or did he want to kill his wife?
Previously on Breakdown.
Reporter Bill Rankin's Breakdown podcast takes a deep dive into the Shakespearean drama surrounding Tex McIver. He's a 48 Hours consultant on the case.
Holding a loaded handgun, pointing it at your wife, falling asleep. Seems pretty reckless.
Using a similar car, Rankin showed us how the bullet that killed Diane McIver traveled through the passenger seat of Tex's SUV. It hits there.
And it goes from right to left through the seat.
And exits out here.
Right.
On the
And
left
goes
side.
down slightly downward path through his wife's body.
The bullet went through Diane's left rib cage and diaphragm, severed a vein and artery in her spleen, and then hit several organs, including her left kidney and stomach.
And she started breathing funny, and she, kind of passed out.
That night, detectives were anxious to hear Danny Joe Carter, the car's driver, explain what Tex did after he shot his wife.
All I could think of was Piedmont Hospital, and I thought, I don't know how to get there. And he said, no, Emory's closer.
Tex decided to go to Emory University Hospital.
There were 4 hospitals, all approximately less than 5 miles from where the shooting is believed to have taken place. Emory was the farthest, at about 4.3 miles. But one of the best trauma centers in all of Georgia, Grady, was only about 3.2 miles away.
Anybody who lives in Atlanta knows about Grady Hospital, and it's a level 1 trauma center. There were people who have said that he went to Emory Hospital because it was going to take longer and maybe let her bleed out.
Family friend Sheriff Howard Sills, who is not involved in the case, says no way, and explains that Grady just was not on Tex's radar.
If you're rich and you're affluent, then you don't want to go to Grady Hospital, because Grady Hospital is where indigent people go. The people in that car that night, they would have thought Emory.
This dramatic surveillance footage shows the SUV arriving at Emory's emergency room, and Tex helping Diane into a wheelchair. Then, before surgery, Diane made a critical statement to her doctors. Her husband did not mean to shoot her.
She said it was an accident.
But 2 hours later, Diane McIver died on the operating table at 12:49 a.m.
You want to have the worst feeling in your life is to be sitting in one of those waiting. 2 surgeons in scrubs and a chaplain come around the corner and start walking toward you.
Now, it was up to detectives to determine, was it truly an accident or was it cold-blooded murder? This Smith & Wesson .38 caliber revolver that killed Diane was in the car's center console, inside a plastic bag, when it was handed to Tex by Diane.
We've had some break-ins in our office. In response to that, I had wrapped my gun in a Publix grocery sack.
The gun was still in the bag when it went off.
The gun was still in the bag?
Yeah, I mean, he might have had his finger on the trigger.
The first rule of firing a gun is don't put your finger on the trigger until you're ready to pull and you have your target in sight.
Law enforcement analyst and former police officer Vincent Hill says a guy like Tex should have known better.
So to wake up out of this sleep, you're startled, your finger's automatically on the trigger, you pull this trigger, and you do one shot. A kill shot, in my mind, it's not likely.
Lean into it, cock the weapon.
And Hill is not alone in his opinion. That's why I asked former Georgia Bureau of Investigation agent Bert Davis to take me out to a gun range not far from Tex's ranch. I wanted to understand the gun.
See how well you're doing? The revolver can be fired 2 ways.
The handgun, which only shoots 1 bullet at a time, can be fired in 2 very different ways: single action or double action. Either way, it does not look good for Tex, because experts say this gun only goes off if the trigger is pulled. In single action, the shooter pulls back the hammer, like this. With the gun already cocked in this position, it hardly takes any effort at all to pull the trigger. It only takes about 2 pounds of pressure to actually pull the trigger, which is why experienced gun owners say you only cock this gun if you know you are about to use it.
No one that I know of would
sit with your gun in
there with a
single
gun
action.
in single action.
Now, double action is a different story. This gun is not loaded, but I want to show you what happens. In double action, you pull the trigger, and the gun automatically pulls the hammer back, rotates the cylinder, and fires. But it's not easy because it takes about 12 pounds of pressure to actually pull the trigger, making it much harder to fire it accidentally.
It would be difficult.
But not impossible.
But not impossible.
But somehow that gun was fired. And to this day, Tex cannot answer this question.
Was the gun in single action or double action?
Good question.
Do you have an answer?
Do I have an answer? Why do I have to answer these? Why does Tex McIver have to answer anything?
Texas lawyer Bruce Harvey is one of Atlanta's most successful and sought-after defense attorneys.
What is your challenge with this gun?
Clearly, a trigger was pulled, right? The question is, was that a voluntary, knowing and intentional action or an involuntary action based upon an accident?
But Tex was clearly no stranger to guns. Out at the ranch, he had what many would consider an arsenal of weapons. After Diane's death, Tex asked his buddy, Sheriff Sills, to go out to his ranch and collect his guns for safekeeping.
So you cleared out how many guns?
As I recall, it was about 35 guns.
Including rifles, handguns, and AR-15s.
Would you describe him as a gun guy?
Yes and no. Here in the South, everybody's got a lot of guns.
We're getting ready to put on a rodeo demonstration with real cows.
But the idea that Tex McIver should have known better was about to become a central and recurring theme for the 75-year-old lawyer.
It gets really crazy.
I think we've called it a textbook example of what not to do after you kill your wife.
Bruce Harvey is one of the most distinctive members of the Atlanta Defense Bar. He has worn a braided ponytail down his back for decades.
Bruce Harvey was not Tex McIver's first attorney.
How did you first hear about it?
It was all over the media.
It all started September 25th.
Startling new information in the shooting death of Diane McIver.
Harvey, who knew Tex through mutual friends, says he watched the news coverage for almost a year, while McIver made a mess of the case and his reputation.
A complete ongoing disaster, mismanaged from day one, I think resulting in the reason that we're sitting here to start with.
It started right after the shooting. Atlanta's media immediately began clamoring for an answer to why on earth Tex had been sitting right behind his wife in his SUV with his finger on the trigger of a loaded gun. 4 days after the shooting, Tex had an explanation in a statement made through a spokesman.
He said that Tex told him that he asked for the gun because there were either homeless people, carjackers, or Black Lives Matter protesters.
That gave Tex an air of being rich, white, and oblivious, igniting a real-life bonfire of the vanities.
Why would you equate Black Lives Matter protesters with carjackers? Why would you inject race into this? That put the story into a whole nother realm, and it went national because of that.
You have this very rich, very powerful white guy in a city that's predominantly black. I think that's why this case is so appealing to the public.
Tex's attorney at the time publicly denied that his client ever said he was afraid of black protesters. But the damage was done, and things were about to get even worse.
CBS 46 has an exclusive look tonight at the diamonds, the furs, and the designer bags about to go on auction.
This was pretty stunning.
Just 2 months after shooting his wife, Tex started selling off Diane's extensive collection of valuable belongings. Her most expensive jewelry, fur coats, and handbags would go to the highest bidders at an auction.
I understand it was advertised as her stuff.
Right.
To bring in more buyers.
And it wasn't just one auction. It looked like a Nordstrom department store, if not better.
The district attorney's office filed motions to block the sales, but a judge denied their requests. And as the executor of Diane's estate, Tex said he had no choice.
Why?
According to Tex, he said that in her will, Diane had left a lot of money to some of her employees and some of her friends. So he needed that money to pay them.
Now, all that money went into the estate and not to him.
But timing in this case was everything.
Tex has come under fire for holding the two sales while still at the center of the homicide.
Should it
case.
have gone forward at that time? Could it have waited? The answer clearly is yes, and it's something we just have to deal with.
At least Tex still had Danny Joe Carter.
And that's it.
Danny Joe was his best witness, the only other person in the car when the gun went off. The night of the shooting, Danny Joe told detectives in no uncertain terms she believed Diane's death was an accident.
There is not a doubt in my mind that it was completely one of those horrible accidents.
But on February 2nd, 2017, a little over 4 months after the shooting, Danny Joe changed her story.
He's not been nice to me and tried to manipulate me.
In a third interview with investigators conducted inside of Tex's SUV, Danny Joe alleged that on the night of the shooting, Tex told her to lie.
He tried to get me to lie, supposedly to protect me from getting all wrapped up in this.
Danny Joe said Tex walked up to her and said, "Why don't you just tell police you weren't in the car?"
There's no question she was in the car. There's no question she was driving. There's videotape at Emory Hospital.
Bruce Harvey concedes that it is possible Tex was just trying to protect his friend.
Danny Joe, at that particular time, was being hounded by the media. And I think a lot of this effort was to try to allow her to avoid the media crunch. Not designed for her not to talk to the police or not to give a particular statement.
But there was no media yet at the hospital.
There was going to be.
Are you saying that Tex may have told her to tell the cops she wasn't in the car so that people would stop hounding her?
Yes.
So Tex may have told her that?
If he did.
But there is no denying this. Days after the shooting, Tex orchestrated a meeting with his lawyers and 2 reporters, where Danny Joe was to make a legal and public statement that the shooting was an accident. When she was a no-show and stopped taking his calls, Tex left this frantic voicemail for her husband.
Let me just be plain. Danny is about to send me to prison. Please erase this voicemail message, but call me right away. Y'all have no idea the problem this is causing. It's innocent, but it's absolutely nuclear for me.
It doesn't sound good when he says, please erase this voicemail message, but call me right away. So what does he mean by that?
When we examine, well, we don't have to explain what he means. They have to explain why it is a crime for him to do that or how it relates.
Bruce Harvey was still watching from the sidelines when on December 20th, 2016, Tex got some good news. The Atlanta Police Department concluded the shooting was not an intentional act. Based on their findings, the Fulton County District Attorney charged Tex with involuntary manslaughter and reckless conduct.
After spending his birthday behind bars, Tex McIver bonds out of jail just before Christmas weekend.
But with the case now in the hands of the district attorney's office, they decided to launch their own investigation into the shooting.
There was a bond hearing where the lead prosecutor, Clint Rucker, strongly hinted that they didn't believe it was accidental. That made everyone think, whoa, okay, this is getting even more serious now.
A little over a week after Tex McIver was charged with involuntary manslaughter, there was more breaking news in this case.
Startling new information in the shooting death of Diane McIver.
Our Atlanta affiliate, CBS 46, uncovered evidence that at the time of Diane's death, Tex owed his wife $350,000.
He was supposed to pay her back with interest by December of 2014. That never happened.
Tex said that the money was Diane's contribution to the construction of that saloon on his ranch, and that, for tax purposes, Diane wanted it to look like a loan.
There was $350,000, but it wasn't ever actually going to be paid back by him.
The $350,000 was a function of nothing more than taxes.
But on paper, it does look like a loan, and one that Tex was expected to pay back.
That could be argued that he didn't want to have to pay that off.
Meanwhile, the Fulton County DA's office was looking for a possible motive for murder. When they heard that Diane may have had a second will, subpoenas were obtained to search the couple's financial records. And that's when this happened. During a search of their condo, Tex was found to be violating the terms of his bond, with, of all things, possession of a gun.
They found a gun in his sock drawer that he probably went to all the time when he was getting dressed, and they found ammunition in the drawer right above it.
Tex insisted that the condo had already been searched for and cleared of any weapons, so the Glock pistol, which he claimed had once belonged to Diane, must have been planted. The judge didn't buy it.
Mr. McIver possessed the gun. I am going to revoke Mr. McIver's bond.
After 4 months out on bond, Tex was back behind bars, when the very next day there was yet another stunning announcement by the DA's office. A grand jury that had been hearing testimony for weeks concluded there was enough evidence to charge Tex McIver with the murder of his wife.
It was surprising that it leapt so far from an accident to a cold, cruel, intentional killing.
Tex would spend the next 8 months in jail, seeing loved ones only through video screen visitations.
Hello, Austin. Mommy, how are y'all?
And desperately trying to get out on bond again.
Well, I love y'all, and I hope to see everybody on Wednesday if things work out. I love you, Austin.
Then Bruce Harvey took over the case.
I don't believe in my heart of hearts, I don't believe as we're sitting here, that Tex McIver had any deliberate intent to do any harm to his wife.
We're going home.
Harvey got Tex released and put on house arrest. Then he set about preparing for trial on a case where there had been one public blunder after another.
Are you concerned about being able to seat an impartial jury?
Yes, I am. I think Tex has been unfairly vilified in the court of public opinion.
Jury selection in the trial of Tex McIver began on March 5th and took a whole week.
Well, today, jury selection got underway in a Fulton County courtroom.
And a pool of more than 140 potential jurors.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning.
When the trial began, Chief Senior Assistant District Attorney Salita Griffin delivered the state's opening argument.
The day that the defendant shot his wife in the back, his life was spinning out of control.
And what became fairly clear is that the prosecution believes Tex McIver's motive for murder was money.
The easiest way for him to gain control was to kill Diane.
Is money a motive here?
No. Very simple answer. He is much worse off without her. I think that is a huge red herring. You know why? Because they've got nothing else.
Now, this is a case about maintaining an image of wealth and power that the defendant created for himself, and the lengths that he went through to keep it.
What if Tex didn't mean to do it? Or what if Tex did mean to do it, but the prosecution fails to prove it?
All rise for the jury.
Testimony in the murder trial of Tex McIver began on March 13th and lasted 20 days. By closing arguments, the jury had heard two very different theories of why Tex McIver shot his wife.
I'm going to talk to you about the facts.
Prosecutor Clint Rucker and his team painted an ugly picture of a man who they say was broke and so desperate for money that he murdered his wife.
He was taking her money and he was regaining control.
Evidence showed that McIver's salary at his law firm had been cut by more than half, while the state says he was living way beyond his means. And remember, the McIvers kept their finances separate.
Remember this email? This is a couple of months before the murder. This is what the defendant says to his wife. I am seriously trying to reduce my monthly expenses. Why? Because his monthly expenses at the ranch alone were $20,000 to $25,000 a month. What does he say? I plan on hitting the lotto sometime this week.
Diane joked that Tex might want to think about becoming their new ranch hand.
Read his job description. Because that is your next life chapter. This is what he said in response. Oh well, back to gigoloing.
The state believes that Tex was using Diane for her money, but what drove him to murder is this. Before they were married, Tex borrowed $750,000 from Diane. As payment, the state says he deeded her half of his ranch.
What that meant was that now the property was no longer owned solely by the defendant.
In 2011, Diane loaned Tex another $350,000. But this time, she made Tex sign a promissory note that gave her the right to foreclose on the ranch if Tex didn't pay up.
So when the loan didn't get paid, she said, I'm gonna put another clause in here that says, you know what? It's not that I don't have to wait until you don't pay me. I can foreclose at any time. And as we sit here today, the loan is in default. By killing Diane, the defendant will regain sole ownership of the ranch.
The jury heard Danny Joe's claim that Tex asked her to lie. They also heard about the Black Lives Matter statement and the auction. But there was more. They heard what happened to Diane's ashes after she was cremated.
Took him 42 days. Pick up his wife's remains. That's where I found him. Tucked back in a closet. In a cardboard box. It's just not right.
But the defense team told a very different story, a love story.
They were in love. Nobody ever saw them arguing. Nobody ever heard her say, I'm going to foreclose if you don't pay me my money. This is the big one.
Bruce Harvey and the defense team tried to show that Tex did not need Diane's money.
Tex was not broke, nor was he in dire financial straits. The state's calculation puts Tex's net worth at $1.7 million before Diane dies.
But what the defense tried hardest to hammer home was that the shooting was nothing but an accident. And remember, that's what Diane said before she died.
The three people that were in the vehicle all said it was an accident.
And as for the gun?
Remember the expert?
With the firearm.
Harvey used the state's own gun expert to show that anyone can fire the gun accidentally.
Remember him demonstrating the weapon and pulling the trigger when he testified right here.
You notice the trigger.
Oops. He's demonstrating it for you on the witness stand. He accidentally pulls the trigger. He says, oops.
The shooting could not have been premeditated, says the defense, because it was Diane who told Danny Joe to take that exit when they hit traffic. And after Tex was handed his gun, he fell back asleep. The defense also presented an expert who said Tex suffered from a long documented sleep disorder, which might explain why he unintentionally pulled the trigger and can't remember how.
Oftentimes when people arouse from these, they don't arouse quickly. They frequently have amnesia for this.
As the case was about to go to the jury, the defense suggested that the state had not proven its case beyond a reasonable doubt.
We do not convict people in fogs of speculation, but on the bedrock of fact.
Diane tried to stand up for herself.
And on behalf of the state, Clint Rucker pleaded with the jury to punish Diane McIver's killer.
Who will stand for Diane McIver? A great woman she tried to be. Will you stand for Diane McIver? As she cries out, who will stand for me?
The jury deliberated for about 29 hours. At one point, each sat in the back passenger seat of McIver's SUV, holding the gun that killed Diane.
Some of the jurors were actually clicking the trigger, so I think it could have made a huge difference in the outcome of this trial.
On their fourth full day of deliberations, the jury sent a note to the judge saying they were deadlocked.
We don't see a path to overcome our differences.
But the judge told them to try again. Then, just 2 hours later, they reached a verdict. Was it malice murder, meaning Tex intended to kill Diane? Felony murder. Tex shot Diane with the intention of causing her bodily harm, but had not intended to kill her. Felony involuntary manslaughter, he acted recklessly, or not guilty.
On count one, murder, we find the defendant not guilty.
Well, when the jury came back and the foreman read not guilty on malice murder, I was like, oh my goodness.
But then they said this.
We find the defendant guilty of felony murder.
Guilty of felony murder. Tex was clearly stunned. The jury felt that he shot Diane without malice aforethought, but intending to do bodily harm.
Might have been a compromise for the jury. It's no compromise for Tex McIver because malice murder and felony murder both carry a life sentence.
A mandatory life sentence.
It's a complete tragedy. I mean, that closes the circle. Everybody loses.
Tex handed over his belt and was handcuffed. Fulton County DA Paul Howard brought it back to the victim, Diane.
We would like to say to Diane, we hope that you were watching, and we hope that you felt that we stood for you and we stood for the things that you represented.
Given these shackles, if you don't mind, I would like to sit.
At his sentencing hearing, Tex spoke directly to Diane.
I know she's here. I feel her presence as I'm speaking to you. Darling, you have brought me more joy and fulfillment that few men on this earth have ever known.
But it's what he didn't say that stood out.
I didn't ever hear you say you're sorry for what you did. To me, that silence speaks volumes.
Prosecutors say this is justice for Diane. Tex McIver's supporters disagree.
She didn't need justice when it's a terrible accident. She's in heaven right now, just heartbroken.
key witness takes the stand in the trial of Patrick Frazee.
Investigators believe Patrick Frazee killed Kelsey Berreth in her townhome on Thanksgiving last year.
Day 2 of the murder trial for the man who allegedly killed his fiancée.
Today, day 7 of the trial, investigators revealed the moments they found
surveillance video of Kelsey Berreth and her 1-year-old daughter at a Woodland Park supermarket is the last anyone's seen of the 29-year-old mother.
If convicted, Frazee could face life in prison.
We can certainly sense that we are in the final days of this trial, and it is certainly...
Cripple Creek is a small town. Teller County is a small county.
We're up in like a minute.
They have never seen anything to this magnitude.
In Cripple Creek, Ashley Franco, KKTV 11 News.
You've covered every second of this trial. What has the feeling been inside that courtroom?
It's been cold, it's been very heavy and chilling. During the first week, we learned about some of the evidence in the case. Crystal Lee, Patrick Frazee's ex-girlfriend, is set to be the prosecution's star witness.
Okay, it's 11:15, again on the 21st of December 2018. We're inside Kelsey's apartment with Crystal.
You are seeing what the jury saw. Remarkable evidence, the heart of the prosecution's case.
When you came in, what did you see?
When I first walked in, I saw blood all over the floor. I saw blood up the wall.
Who is Crystal Lee?
Crystal Lee is a rodeo queen from Idaho. She's very well known, and she's Patrick Frazee's ex-girlfriend. They'd known each other for over a decade. She's the bread and butter to this case.
That's Crystal Lee, wearing a police jacket and hat.
Can you point to the area where you saw and clean blood up on the wall?
She admits to cleaning up the crime scene and tells the prosecution the whole entire story of what happened.
The spray was from here all the way.
She's the only person in the world that they have to possibly convict Patrick Frazee.
We did a deal with the devil. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it in this case. But it's a deal that we made in order to move this case forward and to solve this crime. Sometimes in order to solve a case or move a case forward, we have to give a deal to the devil. That's exactly what we did here.
Did you say that you cleaned off some of the appliances?
I did. I wiped there was blood on the front of the dishwasher. There was blood on the front of the stove.
Crystal Lee was obviously the star witness for the prosecution, and she testified to things that the prosecution needed her to say in order to establish this case.
I'm Aya Gruber. I'm a professor of law at University of Colorado Law School.
I think there were doubts about Crystal Lee's testimony coming into it. Crystal Lee has trafficked in lies.
Crystal Lee is saying he has been planning on killing Kelsey, and he had called me multiple times about it. There's poison coffee. There's a baseball bat, scented candles, a blindfold, phones that are pinging all over Colorado and in Idaho.
I got to tell you, it's one of the most emotional trials I've ever been through, and I've been through a lot of trials. The roller coaster everybody was put on, there wasn't anybody on this team that at some point didn't have tears running down their face.
We just got word that a verdict has been reached in the case against Patrick Frazee.
Tell them try to take it. We're the only ones out here.
There's always a little bit of nervousness and question in the back of your mind.
Just hours ago, we were hearing closing statements, and now we have a verdict.
Patrick Frazee sits in this grim Cripple Creek, Colorado jail, put here by his former girlfriend, Crystal Lee.
There's blood on the wall here. There's blood on the wall here, and there was blood right here.
In disturbing evidence that you will see throughout the program tonight, she tells her story about a crime scene cleanup.
I moved the couch. I wiped the couch off. There was blood behind the couch down the wall.
A plan to transport a body.
We brought the tote here. Okay. We unloaded the tote.
And her help in making sure there would be no trace of it left behind.
The things that were thrown into the fire by me were the belongings from Kelsey's house, the curtains, the pillows, the stuffed animals.
The tale begins when these haunting images were captured. A mother in the grocery store shopping with her baby. Thanksgiving Day 2018, the last time Kelsey Berreth was seen in public.
She's not the kind that runs off. This is completely out of character.
It was Cheryl Berreth who reported her 29-year-old daughter missing after trying to reach her for days.
Kelsey, we just want you home. Call us if you can, and we won't quit looking.
At that time, in early December, Woodland Park Police had not publicly named a suspect.
We are treating Kelsey's disappearance as a missing persons case at this time.
Can't eat and you can't sleep, and the stress won't end until we find her.
Usually it was us four all together all the time.
Ashley Cogburn, Amanda Smith, and Nicole Haywood had an unbreakable bond with Kelsey. They grew up together in Moses Lake, Washington.
From the pictures, she's gorgeous, obviously, and very put together. And so you might think that she's, this prissy girl, but she was not. She was raised on a hay farm and very much a tomboy.
Country girl.
Yeah, she's out there driving tractors and bucking bales.
In flying planes, she was a flight instructor.
She a good pilot?
Oh, yeah. She was really good. She wasn't afraid to challenge the typical boundaries.
So, it wasn't a surprise when a Colorado cowboy named Patrick Frazee caught Kelsey's eye on a dating website in 2016.
He was like a country boy, and that's what she was used to. That's what she liked.
They started a long-distance relationship. Patrick Frazee lived on a 35-acre ranch in rural Florissant, Colorado.
These are 4 dogs. They'll be our dogs to train this fall and winter.
In this video, Patrick can be heard training cattle dogs.
Pepper, that'll do. Down.
He also shoot horses and groom donkeys.
The black and white one is Flash.
Clint Klein has known Patrick for 7 years.
Patrick is the farrier for the donkeys. People call them horseshoers and all that, but our donkeys don't have shoes.
So he trims their feet?
He trims their feet. He gives them, as we call it, donkey manicures.
Klein says Patrick was quiet and dedicated to his work.
He's kind of laid back, kind of stays to himself. He had his ranch to take care of.
Eventually, Kelsey moved to Colorado from Washington State to be closer to Patrick, and they were expecting a child. Her mother, Cheryl, says they were engaged.
Does she have a dress yet? No. I don't think she cared about the big wedding kind of thing. It was between them and God.
Even after their daughter Kaylee was born in October 2017, the couple still didn't live together but shared parenting duties.
He never came to see her, but she would, on her days off, she would go back and be with him.
Friends say Kelsey was struggling to balance the baby, her job, and a long commute. Her relationship with Patrick seemed strained.
She seemed to be kind of stressed out from the whole thing, that she couldn't make him happy.
Was Patrick emotionally abusive?
It appeared that way from what I saw, and it seemed like it was just knocking her spirit down.
Did Kelsey ever say he was physically abusive?
No.
Ashley says Kelsey once mentioned there may have been another woman in Patrick's life.
I think Kelsey had mentioned one time about an ex-girlfriend who still kind of wanted to be with Patrick. Kelsey wasn't worried about it. I don't know if it's because she knew she lived far away. Kelsey didn't seem all that worried about it.
After Kelsey was reported missing, police talked to Patrick. He told them that the day before Thanksgiving, Kelsey said she wanted to end their relationship. KKTV reporter Ashley Franco.
He said that Kelsey wanted to go their separate ways and things weren't working out between them. They wanted to split custody 50-50 and they were just not meshing anymore.
Patrick told police he and Kelsey met to exchange the baby on Thanksgiving Day. He also returned Kelsey's belongings.
A purse, keys to the car, keys to the townhome, and then a gun that Kelsey owned.
It was a gun, Patrick says, he had once taken from Kelsey for her own protection. Police say Patrick told them Kelsey struggled with depression, hinting that she may be suicidal.
When you hear that Patrick said Kelsey was unstable, that she was maybe suicidal.
No,
not at all.
It doesn't match up with Kelsey.
Police searched Kelsey's home, but turned up no signs of foul play. Then, Cheryl and her son went to the house to check it out.
There was a mat, like a rug of some sort in the bathroom, and it's gone. And she had also noticed that the refrigerator looked like it had been wiped down recently. You could see streaks. Later, her son is in the bathroom and notices blood on the base of the toilet.
And the alarms go off in their minds.
Alarms go off.
Kelsey's mother, Cheryl, alerted investigators who returned to the house. This time, they used chemicals to detect the presence of blood.
They found trace amounts of blood everywhere in the bathroom.
Do we know whose blood?
DNA results showed it was Kelsey's.
Investigators believed Kelsey had been murdered, but they needed more evidence. A closer look at Kelsey and her fiancé's cell phone activity Thanksgiving weekend would lead them to her suspected killer.
Patrick Frazee was taken into custody this morning in Florissant, Colorado, just after 7 o'clock this morning, Mountain Standard Time.
Nearly a month after Kelsey Berreth vanished, Woodland Park Police Chief Miles DeYoung made this grim announcement.
Today we arrested Patrick Frazee on charges of first-degree murder of Kelsey Berreth. As a reminder, Patrick Frazee is presumed innocent until proven guilty.
Patrick, what do you have to say?
Despite the murder charge, Kelsey's body had not been found.
As you can tell from the arrest, sadly, we do not believe Kelsey is still alive. Kelsey's daughter, Kaylee, is in protective custody and will be reunited with Kelsey's family.
Patrick Frazee entered a plea of not guilty, but from the beginning, investigators had questions about Patrick's story, starting with his initial claim that the day before Thanksgiving, Kelsey told him she wanted to break up and, quote, go their separate ways.
So this is Woodland Park?
This is Woodland Park.
Yet, there she was, shopping the next day for the family dinner.
You see her grab a cart and put Kaylee in the cart and then go off, and that's last time publicly anyone had seen Kelsey Berreth.
What does she buy here at Safeway?
She buys ingredients for a sweet potato casserole.
Investigators wondered if Kelsey had broken up with Patrick, why would she send him this text? I bought some sweet potatoes in case you wanted sweet potato casserole. Kelsey didn't tell her mother she and Patrick were breaking up when she spoke with her Thanksgiving morning.
Did she sound normal? Did she sound... Definitely. She sounded happy and...
Normal mom-daughter talk.
Yeah.
Another big question investigators had was when Patrick said he last saw Kelsey.
Patrick told officers that he hadn't seen her since Thanksgiving, November 22nd, when he exchanged their daughter, Kaylee Berreth.
In images from a neighbor's security camera on that Thanksgiving day, Patrick and Kelsey are seen at her door with a baby carrier after Kelsey returned from the store. You can see her holding a poinsettia. Later, Patrick is seen at that same location alone.
We don't know whether he's coming or going. He doesn't have Kaylee, and he's not with Kelsey. And then that's it.
University of Colorado law professor Aya Gruber has followed the case.
The critical question is what happened in between around 1:30, 1:45, and 3:30 when they get that picture of him.
Police say this is likely when Patrick killed her.
Investigators have recovered a number of items that make us suspicious that the crime did occur at Kelsey's residence.
Patrick told authorities he drove their daughter Kaylee to his ranch for Thanksgiving dinner. He said Kelsey wasn't with them, but investigators discovered that her cell phone was.
They pulled cell phone records and found that on Thanksgiving Day, November 22nd, all of a sudden, Kelsey's phone and Patrick's phone started traveling together, but Patrick and Kelsey were not together.
Investigators say Patrick took Kelsey's cell phone after he killed her as part of a scheme to cover his tracks. They believe he faked 19 calls between the two phones over Thanksgiving weekend and was sending texts between them, including this one from Kelsey's phone. "I'm going running. I'll call you guys when I get home." His response, "Okay, be safe."
The theory that the prosecution's going to put forward is that that was Patrick with her phone, and he's texting pretending to be Kelsey.
2 days after Thanksgiving, authorities believe Patrick concocted this conversation. "Are you awake? Sorry, I didn't hear my phone. Going to jump in the shower. I'll call you guys when I get out." Okay. Then investigators believe to keep up his ruse that Kelsey wanted the breakup, Patrick sent this message: "If this is truly what you want, I'll respect your wishes and give you space." On Sunday, 3 days after Thanksgiving, there was a bizarre development that would send this case in a very different direction. Phone records show while Patrick's cell stayed near his ranch, Kelsey's phone was on the move, heading west out of Colorado.
There was a text from Kelsey's phone to her supervisor at DOS Aviation saying, "I won't be at work." So people had thought maybe they heard from Kelsey.
The next text from Kelsey's phone said, "Do you even love me?" That text pinged off a cell phone tower 800 miles away.
Reports are correct that Kelsey's phone gave a location near Gooding, Idaho on November 25th.
When that came out, I think everyone was just shocked.
And where's Kelsey?
And where's Kelsey? No one knows where Kelsey is.
So how did her phone end up in Idaho? This woman may have the answer. It was startling news when investigators revealed that 3 days after Kelsey Berreth was last seen, her cell phone had pinged in Gooding, Idaho, 800 miles from her home.
Tonight, we have new information about a 32-year-old Twin Falls woman that may have helped Patrick Frazee cover up the disappearance and alleged murder of his fiancée, Kelsey Berreth.
At the time of Kelsey's disappearance, phone records show that Patrick was in touch with this woman, Crystal Kenny Lee. Crystal was a nurse and avid horsewoman who grew up here.
This is Crystal's world.
KMVT news director and weekend cowboy, Cade Atwood.
We work hard to be able to do this on the weekends. Crystal and her family are a big part of the rodeo community, a very prominent family.
Talk horses, and you're speaking her love language, you know.
Michelle Stein is Crystal's best friend.
Horses are her life. She loves horses.
Take a look at this!
And in Idaho, where rodeo rules, Crystal was royalty. In 2008, she was crowned Queen of the Magic Valley Rodeo.
She was so loved.
Laura Stutzman has known Crystal since she was a teenager.
Crystal was so kind with everybody that It was just so difficult to turn her down in any way.
Crystal had a reputation of getting what she wanted?
No, I wouldn't say it was a reputation of getting what she wanted. Crystal worked so hard at everything she did to try to do everything completely correct.
Authorities believe that it was Crystal who traveled to Idaho with Kelsey's phone. But when the FBI made their initial call to Crystal, she said she had no idea who Kelsey Berreth was. She also denied knowing Patrick Frazee. Then she changed her story.
They asked her, when was the last time you talked to him? And she said, I don't know, I'd have to look at my phone. And then says, oh, in the last month. And investigators are thinking, okay, but we already know that your phone has called his phone multiple times in the last few weeks. She says, I don't have a personal relationship with Patrick Frazee. I've gone to Colorado and looked at a few of his horses, and that's the extent of our relationship.
She lies.
She lies.
Turns out, Crystal Lee and Patrick Frazee had a long history. They met after high school. Then, 8 months before Kelsey disappeared, Crystal and Patrick's relationship heated up. Crystal was recently divorced with 2 children.
She had been out here multiple times to see him, and it was a type of affair.
What did Crystal say about Patrick? Was she in love with him?
I think she was, to a point.
During the investigation, the FBI got a tip that Michelle had explosive information about the case. She says Crystal called and confided in her about a disturbing conversation she and Patrick had a month before Kelsey disappeared.
She was very, very upset, very distraught. She had told me that he had asked her to take care of his baby mama.
And you took that to mean, or she took that to mean?
So I was like, well, I was in shock at first because who says that? Nobody says that. So I was like, wait, what? And she said, yeah, he asked me if I would kill the mother of his baby.
I mean, what are you thinking at that point?
I was just in shock and disbelief.
What was Crystal's tone when she was telling you this?
She was bawling. She was crying. She was extremely upset and scared.
Michelle says she asked Crystal why Patrick wanted to kill Kelsey.
He had told her it was because she wanted to take him back to court to get custody of the baby. And he was in fear that she was going to harm the baby.
Investigators found no proof Kelsey had harmed her daughter, but did find evidence that Patrick had planned to challenge Kelsey for custody and believe that may have been his motive for murder. Michelle says she pushed Crystal to call the police.
I kept telling her, I think you need to call and tell somebody. See, you gotta understand, I'm trusting her to do the right thing.
But I think, Michelle, people watching will say, call the police. Say, you need to talk to my friend. Someone's asking her to kill someone.
You're right. Okay, of course the viewers are gonna think that.
But do you have regret?
Of course I regret it. I regret it every day. Oh my God, I would do anything to have stopped that somehow.
Kelsey had been gone about a month before Michelle talked to the FBI. And when the FBI went back at Crystal a second time, she too was ready to talk.
I think at that point she kind of knows I have to come clean.
But first, Crystal wanted a deal. In exchange for her testimony against Patrick, she agreed to plead guilty to evidence tampering. She admitted to getting rid of the gun, to tossing Kelsey's keys in a canyon, and destroying her phone.
It's a tampering with evidence charge, which is a minor charge compared to murder or, accessory to murder or attempted murder.
She only faces, at max, 3 years in prison.
This is a pretty good deal that she gets.
What Crystal revealed to investigators would become the center of the prosecution's case against Patrick Frazee.
When I first walked in, I saw blood all over the floor. I saw blood up the wall.
When Crystal Lee finally started talking, she didn't stop for 4.5 hours. Her story was stunning. She claimed Patrick tried to get her to kill Kelsey 3 different times.
The first idea was to get a caramel macchiato from Starbucks, Kelsey's favorite drink, and put poison in it.
2 months before Kelsey went missing, Crystal says she drove 12 hours from Idaho to this Starbucks near Kelsey's home in Colorado.
Hi, welcome to Starbucks. What can I get started for you today?
Crystal, a nurse, told investigators she suggested the perfect potion, a lethal dose of Ambien and Valium.
This is the drink.
That is the drink Crystal Lee had ordered to put poison in to give to Kelsey Berreth.
So Crystal brings this Starbucks caramel macchiato right here.
Waits in the alleyway, walks up to Kelsey's door, knocks on the door, and
Kelsey opens it?
Kelsey opens it, tells Kelsey this elaborate story. She says, "I'm new to the neighborhood. Someone had told me that you had helped get my dogs out of trouble." And Kelsey says, "No, I didn't do that."
Does Kelsey take the coffee?
Allegedly, Kelsey takes the coffee inside and closes the door. And from there, we don't know what Kelsey does with the coffee.
But Crystal says she couldn't do it. She didn't poison the coffee. And when Patrick found out, he was angry.
He was furious. He was not happy that she didn't go through with it.
He would play head games with her. A lot.
Crystal's best friend, Michelle Stein.
He just had a way of manipulating her into doing things.
After Crystal said she couldn't go through with the poison plan, she told investigators Patrick came up with a different idea.
He says, I have a metal pipe that I'll leave outside my property that you can come pick up. And I want you to go wait for Kelsey at her townhome. And when she comes, hit her on the back of the head.
The way Crystal tells it, she drove to Kelsey's house with that metal pipe, but didn't attack her and drove back to Idaho. A week later, she says Patrick called with a new murder plan.
Once again, Crystal drove from Idaho to Kelsey's Colorado townhouse.
Crystal claims she waited for Kelsey outside her home, this time with an aluminum baseball bat. But just like her earlier attempts, she says she chickened out.
It's just hard to believe these stories. They seem outlandish and wild.
Phone records show Patrick called Crystal in Idaho around 4:30 on Thanksgiving Day. Crystal said he told her, "You need to get out here now. You got a mess to clean up."
Crystal says that she can't come out that same day, but will come out a few days later. She's in Idaho, loads up the car with cleaning supplies, bleach, hair nets, gloves, trash bags.
She basically brought the equivalent of a hazmat suit and every sort of cleaning product that one might see in one of those TV shows about how to clean up a crime scene.
2 days later, on Saturday morning, Crystal says she drove 800 miles to Patrick's ranch to pick up a set of Kelsey's keys he left for her outside. Then she says she drove to Kelsey's home.
Crystal tells authorities she opens the door and the scene is horrific. There's blood everywhere.
According to Crystal, Kelsey's body was not inside.
And then spends, 3 to 4 hours cleaning and scrubbing the murder scene. She takes some of the things that she couldn't clean and puts them into trash bags and loads them in the back of the car she was driving.
Crystal claims Patrick was back at his ranch during the cleanup.
There was a point in time when Patrick Frazee had told Crystal Lee, when you go to clean up her townhome, there is possibly a tooth somewhere.
Crystal said she found that tooth and put it in a trash bag. Crystal told investigators after the cleanup she met with Patrick. She described to them how he said he lured Kelsey to her death. Crystal claims Patrick invited his fiancée to play a guessing game with candles.
She says that he takes a sweater from Kelsey's room and blindfolds her with the sweater and has candles sitting out in front of Kelsey and is telling Kelsey to guess the scent of each candle.
During her interview with investigators, Crystal said Patrick told her while baby Kaylee was in another room, he took a baseball bat and, quote, he went to swinging. After killing Kelsey with that baseball bat on Thanksgiving Day, Crystal says Patrick told her he put her body in a black tote. This surveillance image shows Patrick at an ATM earlier that day with a black tote in his truck. Crystal went with investigators to Patrick's ranch. She told them that she and Patrick went there together, and she watched him burn that tote.
He poured gasoline in the bucket and pitched it into the fire.
I believe yesterday you said that you also collected wood and put into the burn pit?
Yes, I did.
Police later examined the spot where they believe Kelsey's body was burned. Crystal also went with investigators to Kelsey's home. She's wearing that police jacket and hat. The floorboards had been removed for testing.
And can you point, if you remember, where the tooth was? Around the tooth, what was there, if anything?
Blood.
All right.
There was blood on the chairs. There's blood on this chair. There's blood on the table. There's blood on the Hobby Lobby bag that was sitting there.
She pointed out where she claims she intentionally left blood for them to find.
Right there.
On December 21st, 2018, Patrick was arrested at his ranch and charged with Kelsey's murder.
This is a case without a body. This is a case without a lot of physical evidence. So what we mainly have connecting Patrick Frazee to an incredibly brutal and violent crime is Crystal Lee's testimony.
Crystal, who had cut that deal with prosecutors, seemed shaken when she appeared in court after she turned herself in to authorities.
The Crystal I knew could do no wrong, but the Crystal that has done the things that came out of her mouth is somebody I don't know.
And that leaves Laura Stutzman with one question: why?
Almost a year after Kelsey Berreth's disappearance, there was a long line to get a seat in the courtroom at Patrick Frazee's murder trial.
I think a lot of people that knew Patrick, they don't think that the candle story adds up.
Frazee's friend, Clint Klein, was there almost every day.
I don't know of any guys that would have thought of going out and buying candles and having their girlfriend be blindfolded and then smell the candles.
You think that had to be a woman's idea?
I think so.
Frazee was driven from the jail in a black SUV. He entered the courthouse through this white tent, out of sight from the media. Security was tight. No cameras in the courtroom. District Attorney Dan May.
I got to tell you, it's one of the most emotional trials I've ever been through, and I've been through a lot of trials in my career.
Prosecutor Beth Reed painted a picture of Patrick Frazee.
Very charming, very manipulative, and controlling, all traits consistent with being a sociopath.
Ashley Franco summed up the defense case. No body, no murder weapon, and no clear motive.
They had said, Patrick wasn't involved. There's no evidence to show he was involved. And Crystal Lee had already lied to law enforcement, so she's the one to blame for this.
On day 4, the prosecution's star witness, Crystal Lee, took the stand. Her credibility was on the line.
I don't think we would have known what happened to Kelsey without Crystal Lee.
I started picking up things that were blood splattered.
For 2 days, prosecutor Jennifer Veman asked Lee to describe Frazee's plan to kill Kelsey Berreth. They bolstered their case with surveillance videos and photos. This one shows the black tote in the back of Frazee's truck that Lee says he would use to dispose of her body.
When you came in, what did you see?
blood all over the floor. I saw blood up the wall, saw blood on this wall.
Most disturbing, prosecutors played that video of Lee inside Kelsey's home, showing investigators how she cleaned up the crime scene.
Did you say, correct me if I'm wrong, did you say that you cleaned off some of the appliances?
I did. I wiped there was blood on the front of the dishwasher. There was blood on the front of the stove. There was that cinnamon roll pan had blood on the tinfoil.
They had pulled up the floorboards where they found Kelsey's blood. They showed video of a hay barn where Lee says Frazee hid Kelsey's body in that tote overnight. A cadaver dog alerted to the area. This is a surveillance image of Frazee at a gas station. Lee says he was buying gas to start a fire.
We brought the tote here.
Okay.
We unloaded the tote.
Okay.
Kelsey's body was moved to Frazee's ranch.
Were you present when he started the fire?
Yes, I was.
Okay.
This is the video that shows how Lee says she helped Frazee burn Kelsey's body in that black tote.
What about the accelerant?
Gas.
Okay.
And burned evidence, including Kaylee's toys and Kelsey's blood-stained Bible.
Do you remember what the books were by just...
One of them was her, I would imagine it was a Bible.
Experts say a human female tooth fragment was recovered from Frazee's ranch near the burn site, but there wasn't enough DNA to determine a profile. At the end of her testimony, she told the jury Kelsey's chilling last words, "Please stop." But he didn't.
He keeps beating her and beating her and beating her. The jury needed to hear that. They needed to hear how brutal this was, how uncaring he was, how senseless this was.
Why would Lee help Frazee? She claimed she feared for herself and her children.
She was in love with Patrick Frazee and had been for a long time. As the trial went on and we saw that dark side of Patrick Frazee that Crystal saw, that Kelsey saw, I think you can understand some of that fear. I don't know that we'll ever understand entirely why she did what she did. It's fairly inexplicable.
Perhaps the most shocking testimony came from a surprise prosecution witness.
Your last witness, I think jaws dropped when he started testifying. Tell me about him.
We didn't know about him.
Prosecutor Beth Reed says the surprise witness was an inmate at the same jail where Patrick Frazee was being held.
He actually had started calling our office while we were in the middle of trial.
The former inmate had watched a 48 Hours episode on Kelsey Berreth's murder. Turns out, he says, Frazee gave him a hit list. Some of the names handwritten on paper towels he was instructed to flush.
Describe to me what was in the 16 notes passed between Patrick and the former inmate.
Well, they were requests that a certain number of witnesses needed to disappear. But it was very specific as to Crystal Lee, graphic descriptions of what needed to happen to Crystal Lee. He described putting a bullet in her head.
Also on Frazee's hit list, Crystal Lee's best friend, Michelle Stein, and Kelsey's mother, Cheryl Berreth.
What does that say about Patrick Frazee?
It says that Patrick will do whatever he wants to get whatever he wants.
The defense called no witnesses. Frazee chose not to testify. The case went to the jury. After 3.5 hours of deliberations, a verdict.
A verdict is in this 11 breaking news alert.
The jury says they unanimously found Patrick Frazee guilty of first-degree murder.
Frazee was found guilty of first-degree murder, sentenced to life in prison plus 156 years.
Do you think if Patrick hadn't involved Crystal, he would have gotten away with Kelsey's murder?
Yes, I do. I think it's very possible he would have gotten away with that. Involving Crystal was a stupid plan. The whole plan was stupid. But he wanted Crystal Lee to pin it on.
As for Crystal Lee, she's facing a maximum of up to 3 years in prison.
I think A lot of our viewers are probably thinking, Crystal Lee, given what she's admitted to, got a really good deal.
She did. And it's not right, and I'm not going to try to justify it in any way. It's unfortunately a part of my profession that sometimes in order to solve a case, we have to give a deal to the devil. That's exactly what we did here.
If you could sentence Crystal Lee, what would it be?
A heck of a lot more time than 3 years. She could have saved Kelsey so many times over so many months, and it's totally inexcusable.
Is this justice for Kelsey and Kaylee? Can there ever be justice?
Justice in this case? Kelsey would be sitting here talking to you, not us. Excuse me. So we can certainly seek a certain amount of justice, but not the justice that this case deserves.